Steve Fambro and the Aptera Motors Instagram page just teased something that got me really pumped and excited that I had to do a video on it just because there's so much room for speculation, which is pretty much all I do here. If you don't like speculation, please leave. But yeah, essentially it's this photo showcasing the branding Aptera Solar, which is clearly attached to some kind of panel, but what I noticed in this photo is that the solar cells are not in the same arrangement that they are on Aptera's own vehicles, which typically have, you know, the 45-degree angle. It's kind of a diamond pattern, which looks really clean and very cool. But just the indication that there's a solar panel that has the lamination and is likely attached to something that Aptera is not necessarily making themselves. They're just supplying the solar to another brand already, and the description on Instagram is saying there's some exciting partnerships to be announced very soon. This, in my opinion, validates a lot of the terminology that Aptera has used in the past by being a brand obsessed with solar mobility, and there's been a lot of taglines on their pages in the past saying invest in solar mobility, even though there's been some pushback from the community I've seen that said, you know, it's cool that the Aptera has solar on it, but I live in a place where I'm not going to get much solar power. Or there's many others that say, I think the solar is kind of just icing on the cake. The main reason they want the Aptera is just because it's super efficient, super aerodynamic, and I've even seen some people suggest that, hey, I would rather have my Aptera sooner or for cheaper, even if it meant having no solar cells on it at all. But I think this teaser that Aptera is pushing out there is actually an indication that there's some partnerships down the road and there's some brands or companies that they want to work with, and that indicates that Aptera, as more of a business-to-business relationship, is actually going to be a lot bigger than just making auto cycles, which in itself I still think could be a huge market. Like, genuinely, I don't think we know what the potential market size is for a vehicle that's capable of charging itself, because we've never had that before. A vehicle with a reasonable price, with lots of storage space, that has high range, that's still fully enclosed so you can drive it in the cold and the heat, still has windshield wipers, so it's not like a motorcycle or an Arcimoto. You can still drive it around like a car despite being a three-wheeler and have the ability to charge itself. Like, there's never really been a vehicle like that on the road, so it's hard to know what the potential market size for that is, but I think it'll be big. But aside from that, there's likely an even bigger market of applications for brands, whether they be automotive or maybe others, that want to incorporate Aptera's patented curved solar cell design and implement it into their own products. And I think that most other companies are not going to be trying as hard to incorporate solar, because most other car companies especially are making vehicles where solar would not be that beneficial. Chris Anthony in interviews has even mentioned this several times. Like, if you just slap solar cells on most of today's vehicles, they wouldn't result in a huge efficiency gain, because Aptera is the only vehicle really that has a lot to gain from solar mobility because it uses so little power. But because Aptera is working on volume production for their vehicle, and they're having to scale everything up to ensure that they can produce solar panels for their vehicles at scale and at a reasonable price, they might actually be able to be so cost competitive that other automotive brands out there can just license Aptera, buy the solar panels directly from them, and if they can incorporate it in such a cost-effective way that it doesn't cost too much for the other brand to implement solar, then it might actually start to become a lot more popular. I'm thinking of vehicles that are inherently fairly efficient, so obviously putting solar panels on something like an F-150 Lightning or a Rivian R1T, yeah, that's not going to benefit vehicles like that all that much, because they don't have enough surface area for enough energy to be brought in, plus they're very inefficient vehicles. Even though they're electric, they're still averaging around 2.5 miles per kilowatt hour. But other EVs on the road, potentially like a Lucid Air or a Hyundai Ioniq 6, which is capable of exceeding 5 miles per kilowatt hour somewhat regularly, that's when covering the vehicle with solar cells might actually start to put a meaningful dent into how much free charging these vehicles get on the daily. Depending on how many places on the vehicle they're comfortable putting Aptera Solar, they might be able to get 10 to 20 miles of range per day, which easily translates into hundreds of miles per month and thousands of free miles per year, and I think that could be a really huge selling point. But again, the unique position Aptera is in my opinion, is that they're the only company that's going to know how to cost-effectively mass-produce durable, consistent, reliable, serviceable, that are tested and validated for vehicle applications, you know, making sure they're strong and durable and can withstand hail, and the cells are capable of fracturing and still technically working. What other company is going to have the economies of scale for vehicle-grade solar other than Aptera? Basically, what I'm trying to say is it doesn't make sense for Hyundai or Lucid or even Tesla to try to build their own vehicle-grade grade solar because most of their vehicles are not going to benefit all that much from their solar. But if they want to add it as an option and they can outsource the production of those panels to a company that can do it cost effectively like Aptera, then we might actually start to see Aptera branded solar panels on lots of other applications in the future. It could be other vehicles, it could be boats, it could be aircraft, it could be stationary storage devices, who knows? But obviously I'm a huge fan of solar applications. I just think it's so limiting to just assume that we should put it on rooftops. It's already a fairly fragile part of the household, and you often have to play this huge storage game because you have all of this energy, but you make more than you're actually using, so you have to find a way to store it. We have all this additional wiring, and we have to keep it all localized, and there's less and less people that are able to afford buying their own homes anyway, which is why I get really excited about the idea of implementing solar on the vehicle itself. Bypass the whole process of having to fuss around with roof installations, which can be very expensive, very dangerous, and having to store all of that excess solar energy into a power wall. Now you need an inverter and a gateway, and then charge the EV, but then you can't charge the EV if it's away from the house. No, let's skip all that and just let the vehicle itself be charging whenever there's sunlight. And a lot of these vehicles' lives is just sitting around basking in the sun, and all of that energy is being wasted when it could be utilized to actually propel the vehicle forward. And I'm really excited that other companies and other brands are seeing this application outside of just Aptera's application, and now it seems like there's a very good chance that Aptera is going to be bringing in revenue not just from their auto cycles, but also just from their solar intellectual property. Does that get you guys excited? It definitely does for me, but of course, at the end of the day, I'm most excited also just to get my Aptera as soon as I possibly can. I really need it for all the additional driving I've been doing lately, and my Model 3 is a great vehicle, but it doesn't have as much solar as I'd like, and a little more range, of course, would go a long way. But what do you guys think Aptera is teasing? Who do you think is contracting them to build solar panels? Feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos, so thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.